Starting your day off with a take on Vegas you won't get anywhere else.
Hi, I'm Holly Madison, and I listen to Brian Shapiro.
Hi, this is William Shatner, and I listen to Brian Shapiro.
Hey, this is Larry the Cable Guy, and I listen to Brian Shapiro. Why? Because I'm a good American. So is he. And if you don't listen to him, you need to pack up and leave this country.
This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Welcome all guys!
What's up, everybody? It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, glad you could join us on a Friday alongside my co-host, Mr. J.D. Sharp. He doesn't have headphones today. He doesn't have the right jack. You got to go to Radio Shack, my friend.
I'm
That's
all
what you
jacked
do.
up.
Yes. Well, I'm jacked up, too, because it's not every day you get to have a UNLV legend here in studio. A wonderful family. Of course, you know his father, the late, great Jerry Tarkanian, did so many great things for Las Vegas. One of the best coaches of all time. A wonderful mom who's also done so many great things for Las Vegas as a politician as well. Great guy, and we're so happy to have him in studio. Danny Tarkanian. Danny, I appreciate you so much for coming in. How are you?
Well, great, and thank you for having me.
Sure. God, I have so many questions to ask you. Plenty of political questions. We'll get to that later. Let me start with UNLV. You know, you obviously you played for your dad, your family, just a legendary family, great family. And when you, what would your dad say if you guys walked into the Thomas and Mack Center today and you saw 3,000 people in the arena? What would your dad say to you?
I don't know. He's never been a negative guy, so I doubt he would say anything negative about it. I'm sure he would be surprised by it, for one, and probably disappointed. But look, my dad always said that UNLV's got the greatest fans around. They're behind him, win or tie. And that's the truth. You know, you got to win. If you're not winning, they're not going to support you. And this is almost any place. You go any place in the country, they're not going to draw if they're not winning.
Right. I agree with that 100%. And I know your father, who obviously coached Dave Rice, I know you guys were a supporter of Dave. And I think Dave Rice is a great guy, fantastic guy, great father, great husband, cared so much about UNLV. It just didn't work out here. For whatever reason, it just didn't work out. What do you think, though, of the latest hire 3 years ago, I guess 2.5 years ago, of Marvin Menzies and what's transpired in the program, since then?
Look, and I'm not going to evaluate the coaching staff or what's happened in the past. Obviously, anybody who's followed the program understands it hasn't achieved very much success lately. Even Lon Kruger, who I think is one of the best coaches around,
Agree.
Really wasn't. He got to a point and get in the tournament into the Sweet 16, but wasn't getting it back to taking a shot again back to the Final Four, which this program should. In my opinion, this program has great facilities. It's got great tradition. Back when my father was coaching, it used to be a negative that the city was a negative when you went out and recruited players because other coaches would use it that it's like too much gambling, the mob, prostitution. They use it against you. Now all those high school players, they come to Las Vegas over the summer and they play in tournaments here. Las Vegas is the attraction. Everybody wants to come and live in Las Vegas. That's why the Golden Knights are getting players there. The Oakland Raiders will have whoever they want to get because free agents want to come here. UNLV should be great every year, and I would hope that they would be competing for a spot to the Final Four every year. Not getting there, but competing for it every year.
You make such a good point about, and that's a big part of recruiting. I mean, it should not be difficult, right, Danny, to recruit here, right?
It isn't the recruiting that's hurting UNLV. Okay, first of all, what really bothered me, and I think when they were talking about this, I don't know if it was during Davis' period or afterwards, they said we got to really get to a point that we got a chance to get in the tournament every year. And to me, that's a slap in the face of every ex-Rebel that had put so much into this program to make it what it really is. They should be competing every year to go to the Final Four. You're not going to get to the Final Four, but if you get there every 5-10 years, it's great. But you should be having competing for that, and getting the tournament should almost be a lock every year. UNLV's gotten good players, very, very good players. They've gotten great players here over the years.
Sure.
For whatever reasons, they're not playing together. I'm just going to give you a little bit of – first of all, I want to say something about Marvin Menzies. I think he's a great guy. I was an assistant for my father at Fresno State. We had a player named James Gray, and the guy had no parents growing up. He lived on the streets. He finished college at Fresno and didn't graduate. And Marvin, he had played for Marvin in junior college. Marvin hired him at New Mexico State as taking care of that kid. He takes care of – he also hired another ex-player that we knew. He takes care of his players. He's a good guy, and I hope that he succeeds.
I'm glad to hear that.
But my dad's philosophy in coaching, I think there's a lot to it, and it's really you can carry it over to other professions besides just coaching. But he used to say, if your players don't have great pride in the team, the university, and the community, you're never going to get them to compete as hard as they have to be successful. So the first thing is you got to get those players to love and not only the city of Las Vegas, but UNLV and their teammates. And that's not an easy thing to do. You build pride by having mutual respect for each other. And at UNLV, we did some things that were just extremely difficult. Our preseason conditioning program was incredible. We would run on the hills, we'd run sprints, we'd do stuff. Every day somebody was throwing up. And we would help each other to get across the finish line. But when it was done, we respected each player that did it. And then when we went to the gym, we would practice without a basketball in a conditioning class, just going doing defensive stuff for almost 2 hours a day. And it was brutal. But you grew to respect and appreciate your teammates. And it's something you got to build upon. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But I think the biggest problem we have here, the players have not bought into what a special place UNLV is and what a special place this community is. They should want to stay here. They should want to build this program. And then when they do that, they will play harder. I don't see UNLV playing as hard as they should be playing. And my father also said, I think this goes along with every single successful program in the country right now. You win with defense. You don't win with offense. Duke plays great defense. When Kruger was here, I think Kruger's one of the best defensive coaches in the country.
Agree again. Yep.
You can't drive on a Kruger team without getting double teamed.
And he got guys that stayed here for 4 years and committed to the program.
Exactly. So you got to win with defense, and I don't think UNLV's played real good defense. Not just Marvin's teams, but going back,
Dave's teams too.
We watch, and even before you take out Kruger's teams, even before some of them, I was talking to Dickel, who was a point guard after my father left. He was a point guard for Bano. And he had told me he's in Australia, I believe, or New Zealand, and he came back to Las Vegas. He watched one of the practices, and he couldn't believe they don't work on defense that much in practice. In fact, I think he said he didn't do any defensive drills. A typical practice for my father's team when we were there, we'd spend the first hour on defensive drills. Then we'd spend the next hour going on 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and 4-on-4 defensive to offensive stuff, where you concentrate on defense and you go offensive defense. And then we might spend a half hour a day working on offense before we'd shoot free throws. But we emphasize defense.
That's incredible.
And we played great defense, and defense wins games. And,
I agree.
And that's a very valid point. One thing that people, the misconception is that the Running Rebels were this great offensive team, and you were, but you also led the country in three-point percentage defense 2 years in a row.
I don't have any idea what the percentages were. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I think those are so overrated. You know what it was? Nobody could run their offense against us. We created turnovers, which leads to fast break baskets. Name some great offensive players we had that, and tell me what they did in the NBA.
Well, we all know that Anderson Hunt didn't make it to the NBA for a lot of different reasons.
But you guys, you're looking at even the late kids. I mean, look at in 1977 they averaged 110 point was 1976 110.5 points a game. The next year 108.6 points a game.
Oh, you're right.
Every one of those players got drafted, but none of them had big NBA careers, and none of them were great offensive players.
You're right.
Reggie Theus was the closest. You know what they were? They were a great defensive team. They were forcing teams in North Carolina with Phil Ford, a 3-time All-American in the Final Four. They forced over 20 turnovers against them. They're all defensive teams.
You're right.
They talk about the amoeba in his championship teams, and that were a great defense, but it was also their man pressure defense that caused you. Greg Anthony was the greatest defensive
I was just going to say, Greg Anthony was so underrated as a defensive player. Now, we all know Larry Johnson got all the hype that year, right? And rightfully so. He was a fantastic player. In the NBA, it wasn't like he was scoring 40 points a game. I mean, you're right. Your team defense was incredible, and that's what your father was. He was, defense, rebounding, that kind of coach. And you're right. And so let me bring up a few names. And again, I'm not here to badmouth 18, 19-year-old kids that played for UNLV. However, I will say, a perfect example of what you're talking about, in my opinion, is a guy like Anthony Bennett, right? He's got all this hype around him, and I'm not going to blame Dave Rice for it, okay? But I think he was a kid, he felt privileged. He was here for 1 year. He knew he was a one and done. Didn't work on his body, didn't get better throughout the season. What did they do in the NCAA tournament? Nothing. Didn't play defense. Brandon McCoy. Now, maybe McCoy didn't have the skill or the ability Anthony Bennett had, but another kid who couldn't defend a pick and roll, and then they go to the NBA, and they're a bust.
And Bennett was still drafted number 1. I have no idea how that happened.
Yeah, so you're so right.
You got a great point, then. I'm going to tell you, early on, until my dad's last 2 teams, they never got the great players, the top 10 players in the country. They got players that were just a notch below, and they came here with a chip on their shoulders. And they said, you know what, we weren't considered the best player. We were under them, but we're better than them. And they would play harder. They ended up working harder and became better. We had a kid at Fresno State, and his name was Winfred Walton. He was considered the second best player coming out of high school behind Kobe Bryant. In fact, he broke the McDonald's high school All-American scoring record. He came to Fresno, and they called him Fat Freddy because he was so fat he would never get in shape. He didn't care about playing. He played 1 year. He was horrible. We were horrible. We had a horrible team, and he went pro his first year. He's never played, and he's on the streets, and he was at least 10 years ago when I last heard about him, on the streets in Detroit doing some bad stuff. And it's just he had the hype. He had the ego, for whatever you want to call it. He wouldn't buy into the fact that, there's a lot of really great players. He had
the sense of entitlement.
Exactly.
You've been around this game your whole life. I watch NBA, and I know you were drafted by the San Antonio Spurs. You had a little cup of coffee there in the NBA, and I watch these games.
It was a half a cup.
Well, you were a very talented player back in the day. I look at these old NBA games right from the 80s. I grew up a huge Celtics fan, and I see I loved Larry Bird, DJ, all those guys, Mikhail Parrish. I just love those teams, right? And I watch those games, and I see how physical the game was back then. Back then, yeah, were they making good money? It wasn't like today. Those guys cared more about winning than anybody, in my opinion, today. And I watch those games, and then I don't like comparing eras and all that stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe LeBron James will be able to get to the basket as easily in the 80s as he does today. Hasn't the game changed that much, college and NBA? I mean, I don't think there are as many pure shooters today as there were back then. And I just feel like the game, especially the NBA, it's just was so much more physical back then.
It was very physical, and the NBA made an effort to try to go away from that because basketball shouldn't be all fighting and clothesline and people like the
That's a little too far, yeah. Lambeer, yeah.
Well, the guy Rambis, right?
Kurt Rambis.
Kurt Rambis was. They were brutal games back then. But they did. What I will say is they cared more about the games and winning than a lot of people do. Michael Jordan was like that. All he cared about was winning.
Yep.
The killer. Today, you got to understand this now. The way it's changed with the AU programs and how much emphasis has been put on the kids at a young age and what those those apparels are providing for those kids at a very young age. So from the time a kid's 6, 7, 8 years old, they're really good. They're getting AAU coaches to give them shoes and jerseys, telling them how great they are, what a future they have. They got all these people hanging around with them saying, hey, you're going to make it to the NBA. And they all think they're special, and that's all that matters is making it into the NBA and making money. And they lose the fact of what those other people that played really cared more about winning.
It's getting out of control, Danny. I've been a high school official here for 20 years, and sometimes I ref some of these kids that are 10, 11, 12 years old, right? And I'm not going to mention names, but I've seen some varsity coaches at the Tarkanian Center, which is a great facility, by the way. Kids they're doing a great job there.
It's the best facility in town.
It is. It is a great facility. I've reffed a lot of games there. They have adult games there, kids games. It's a fantastic facility. No knock on that. I'm just saying I've seen a few varsity high school coaches, in a way, recruiting, watching 11 and 12-year-old kids play basketball. And I'm thinking to myself, you should be ashamed of yourself. That there is no room. There should be no room for that. An 11 or 12-year-old kid should not be recruited. 16, 17, 18, fine. I don't have a problem with that. These are 10, 11, 12-year-old kids.
I agree completely with you. And it's, as I mentioned, not just the coaches. It's what they're getting from the shoe apparel companies and the AU coaches. And it's a real shame. And it's taken away a lot of the love of the game and emphasized more on people's egos.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned how the game was so much more physical back in the mid-'80s, early '90s. If LeBron James is going down the lane against Bill Laimbeer, who wins that battle? Does he knock him over, or does Laimbeer figure something out?
Shoot, Laimbeer's going to knock him over.
Really?
I love it. See, that's what I say.
But, because Laimbeer might get knocked over, too, and he might get all bloodied up, but he's going to knock him down. He's gonna. Those guys were crazy back then. The Dennis Rodman, those guys, the way they played. I mean, it was a half a football game, half basketball the way they played. But I mean, I love those Lakers Celtics games. But boy, you drove to the lane, they took you out. I tell you, one of the great shows to watch. I think it's a 60 for is that
30 for 30
for 30 on the Detroit Pistons.
I saw that,
and they talked about how Detroit couldn't beat. No. Yeah, how Michael Jordan had really killed them the first time they played him. the first year. So they decided from that point on, they were going to take Michael Jordan out of the game. If he drove, they're going to knock him to the ground.
Yep.
And they got highlights of him just bam, bam, bam. And I'll tell you what, you got to give Jordan credit. He got knocked down, didn't say a word, got back up. He got knocked down.
I heard stories about Lambeer. He would purposely put his feet underneath a jump shooter like Larry Bird, so Bird would turn his ankle. I heard stories like that. It was absolutely crazy. Who's the best player you ever played against in your career?
Michael Jordan, no doubt about it.
You played against Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So bring me back to that.
Let me tell you what's so interesting about him. He played. They said that who's the only coach that could hold Jordan under 20 points a game? It was Dean Smith. He would never let Michael Jordan shoot the ball that much. So when he played, I played in a college all-star team. We were the third best group. The best was the Pan American team, which Michael Jordan played on, and a lot of other great players. But Michael wasn't that well known then. People heard about him. They didn't have TV televising every game either. So you heard great things about him, but you didn't know how good he was. This was 1983, the summer of '83, and we played that all-star team, and we're beating them with about 2 minutes to go, and Michael Jordan had done a thing. And I'm thinking, this guy's so overrated. He's not very good. Next thing you know, he gets a steal, dunks it. Gets a steal, makes an assist. Gets another steal, hits a jump. And they ended up beating us by about 15 in the last 3 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Michael Jordan, it was like he was playing against kids and didn't feel it was worth him to start
just turned
sweating.
it on. You felt like you
turned
could just
it on
turn...
and just blew us away.
Did he ever trash talk? Did you ever hear anything? Did he ever say anything to you on the floor?
I was never that close to him.
So MJ was kind of like Nevada in the Mountain West this year, basically. They kind of turn it on when they feel like it.
Yeah, exactly.
If I told you that, moving forward to 2019, that Musselman and Nevada would be a top 10 team in the country and that UNLV would be barely a top 200 team in the country, would you have believed me?
I'd believe the first half. I know Eric Musselman very well. I know his
Great
father
coach.
very well. What he is he's what you were saying. People get mad at. We'll talk about Larry Stacey later for cussing.
Yeah.
Nobody cusses like Musselman. Musselman's crazy. I mean, anybody who deals with him knows how crazy he is.
We just had Rex Walters on the show, who's Muss's assistant, and I think Rex is the same way. And we are kind of exchanging stories. You're right. Muss is. He foams at the mouth on the sidelines. But you know what? He demands the most out of his players in a way similar to what your father did. Your father wasn't necessarily a screamer like him.
You got my dad was, and I want to talk about that some if we can. My dad motivated with sarcasm and wit.
I love
while
that.
Most coaches during that time period were all in your face coaches.
Can you give me an example of that? Like for you, even playing for your dad, what was something he did or said to you?
Okay, I'm defending this guy in practice, and I didn't even realize this until my dad had passed away. We're going through old films of it, and he yells at me in practice, and he says, "Danny, is that player that good, or is it just because you're guarding him?" I go, God. I'm going to tell you two other quick stories.
I love it.
He called the team together, and he did this every 2 or 3 years, so every new group of people heard it. But if we weren't playing hard, he'd call us together. He'd sit you around. First of all, he always called the team together at the end of practice, and on occasions he'd give you a little sarcasm and wit, a motivational technique. So his favorite one was he'd say, "You guys are all a bunch of bandits. You're robbing the university. You don't play hard. You get a scholarship check. Next time you go pick up your scholarship check, wear a mask and gun because you're a bunch of robbers." We're sitting there, and half of us want to laugh.
Oh,
the other
that's
half
great.
scared to laugh. And then I'll tell you the other thing my dad did that no other coach could get away with it. But he did it. I don't know how he did it, but he told you exactly how he felt honestly, even if it really bothered you and offended you, and you admired it by it. So my first year there, we're playing, and Michael Lloyd's a guard, and he's a point guard. And he comes down court and shoots a shot and misses it in practice. My dad starts yelling, "Michael, God darn it, don't shoot that shot." Mike's a really nice kid, and he says to my father, "Well, Coach, just tell me, when do you want me to shoot it and when don't you want me to shoot it?" My dad says in front of everybody, the whole team, and don't forget, we had a bunch of people that would come watch practices too. So in front of everybody, he would say, "Michael, if all 5 guys on the opposing team fall down and die, and they're lying there listlessly on the floor, then you can shoot it. But I want it to hurt so badly you'll never shoot it again." I said, "Son of a gun, I'm never shooting the ball. I'm not shooting it. Forget it."
That is so hilarious. You were just joining us, Danny Tarkanian, talking some stories, some UNLV stories, of course, about the late, great Jerry Tarkanian. Yeah, go ahead.
I got one more or not?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so this was the one that really got to me because I'm his son. You'd think he'd take care of me a little bit. So our junior year, our sophomore year, Larry Anderson and Sidney Green are leading the team in scoring and this and that. There's a lot of jealousy on the team. So my dad called the team together. He goes, "I hear some of you think I'm favoring Larry Anderson and Sidney Green." You know what are most coaches going to say? "I'm not. I treat you all the same," and everything. my dad pulls us together. He says, I understand some of you think I'm favoring Larry and Sid. I just want you to know that I am. Larry and Sid's carrying us. That's why we're winning. He said, if we're on a desert island and I got one canteen of water, I'm going to give Larry and Sid all they need. If there's anything left over, I might share it with the rest of you. I'm going, dang, you're going to thirst your own son to death, huh?
I would imagine you must have hundreds of stories like that. And you know what? You talk to all the players that played for your father. They all loved him. And that is rare in today's day and age. There's a lot of former players that play for specific coaches. I won't name who. And they tell me that they just want to get out of there. Or all these kids that are transferring and they want another situation. I'm friends with Anderson Hunt, who came in studio last month. And, I ran into Larry Johnson a few months back. And all these guys that played for your father, they all tell me the same thing. They love him. Like he was like the second father to them. And I think that's what's most important. When you think of your father, yeah, sure, Hall of Fame coach, brought UNLV to stardom, national championship, but he also you mentioned caring about players,
honesty and loyalty,
right? And that was great. And we don't need to get into some of the things that they did to him at the university. We don't need to go back there and be negative, like you said. But loyalty, that's the key word, loyalty. And unfortunately, there were a few people at UNLV that were not so loyal to him, and he deserved better than that. But I think UNLV is very, very lucky. Well, I know they are very, very lucky that you played there and that your father was able to coach here and set the foundation. And, hey, I agree with everything you said. I hope they get back there. But if they are going to get back there, in my personal opinion, you need different coaching staff. As much, Marvin Menzies, great guy. You're right. Good guy. But I don't know if he's tough enough. We need toughness out there, and that's why I bring up my friend Larry Eustace, because I think he would bring that here, And but again, we'll have to wait and see what happens. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. I know they play Fresno tomorrow. Your dad's two teams. Your dad coached Fresno State coming to Hudson, who was the former assistant here at UNLV under Dave Rice, is now the head coach there, and he's doing a pretty good job. Are you able to get
a pretty good job? He's doing a great job.
He's probably going to get the coach of the year.
He absolutely should. He when the Fresno job opened up, he called me and asked me to help him out. I didn't know if I have any pull or not over there, although the president of Fresno Castro has been very nice to me. But he called me, and we made some calls from him and put our word on the line. And I'd heard some great things about him. I didn't know much about him personally, but I heard that when he was at UNLV, he did a great job, not only recruiting, but with his defense.
Yeah.
And at San Diego State, he was known for as a defensive coach.
He really did.
And he's at Fresno. I'm watching them play. They play great defense.
They play tough. He's a defensive-minded coach. And like you said, basketball better than anybody. You have to play defense, and you have to get guys to buy in and play hard. And that's exactly what they're doing. We got to take a quick break. But when we come back, if you can stick around for one more segment, we'd appreciate that. Is that okay?
If the little man says it is.
Little man, is it okay? You got your son here, Jerry Tarkanian Jr. Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll move to maybe a little bit of political talk and talk a little bit about your career, if that's okay. And certainly a privilege to have Danny in studio. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick break? And when we come back, we'll be joined again by Danny Tarkanian. We'll take your phone calls at 257-5396. Again, that number to call, 257-5396. We'll be back right after this on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, the legend himself, Danny Tarkanian, joining us in studio. Love talking stories about his dad. And the last time I saw your dad, Danny, was when they did that. They honored him with that statue in front of the Thomas and Mack. And I know that he'd had some health problems at that time, but he was still able to say a few words. And I thought that was really special. I'm just saying, from personal experiences, being able to talk to your dad, and I've interviewed him on a number of times, I feel privileged. I really do. Why don't we take one basketball caller, and then we'll switch to politics, if that's okay. Let's go to Scott. Scott, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. How are you?
Good. Hey, Danny, I love listening to the stories. It's something the average fan never hears, so I appreciate you sharing them.
Thank you. We were very fortunate to be a part of it.
I've got a question for you about a team that you and your father coached at Fresno State. I think it was the 97-98 team.
Yep.
And you had like 5 NBA players, Chris Herron, Rafer Alston, Tremaine Fulks, Andre Jones, and just some crazy stuff happened that season. I remember like 6 guys got suspended at some point during the season.
Many more than that.
Like coaching a team like that.
First, that was the one I was talking earlier about, Winford Walton. He was on that team, and he was the best of them all. He was a number 2 high school player coming out, as I mentioned. It was by far the most talented team my father had ever coached. Tremaine Fulks was a Pac-10 Freshman of the Year. Rafer Alston was a legend in New York City. I'm not sure if he was a high school All-American. He He didn't have the grades coming out. He went to junior college, had a great junior college career. Chris Herron was a great player, but he was on drugs all the time, and he got kicked out of Boston College, and he got on drugs at Fresno, including that year. And Terrence Roberson
Avondre
Jones was a super player. And then Terrence Roberson was a 3-time parade All-American, one of only a handful of people that did that. But again, we talk about what happened in that year was, first of all, they didn't get along very well together. They didn't buy into the things we talked about, having pride in the team, the community, and the university, and we couldn't get them together. Winthrop Walton was the worst of that. The other thing is, many of them were doing, which is so funny now, they legalized marijuana here, right? And they suspended. We had a player, we didn't talk about, Damon Fournier was the JC Player of the Year, and he was our starting power forward.
Lefty, 6'8" lefty.
Great player. But he was smoking marijuana since he was in his mother's belly, because she was smoking marijuana. He did almost the day he got out. And what they did was, the Fresno football team had some drug problems, and they were going to suspend the entire receiving corps before their big game, and they ended up canceling the drug problem, and the next year they implemented the most stringent one possible, which started that year for us, and they tested everybody. And with the football team, they allowed those guys, they were switching urine and doing different things, and our players thought they were going to get away with it the same way. You'd hear them talk about it. In fact, Avondre Jones is one that tested positive, and he said, "Danny, those football players are telling us how to do it, but when we do it, you got the guy in there watching us pee. We can't, it's crazy what was going on there." But what they did was, it was almost all of it was marijuana, except for Chris Herron. Yeah. He was on stronger stuff. And so Damon Fournier tested positive right when the season started. What they did was, they would suspend you. You'd go to rehab center. When you got done, you come back. If you tested positive again, you were done. So virtually every other week, we would have a new player tested positive, would be ineligible. They would end up having another one coming in after his rehab program. So we're shuffling players in and out. And every Monday we're sitting there, we get a call from that leg director, okay, who do you think it's this time? And they all got suspended. So we went up and down. Chris Herron was the key, though. Did
you like the 30 for 30 they did on him? I thought it was fantastic.
It was great. But, listen, Chris has done great. He straightened himself up, but he was a mess at Fresno. And,
can you believe that this kid, as talented as he was, can you think of anyone else that could shoot up and beat the drugs that were in his system and get on the basketball court as a college player and be able to do what he did? It's unbelievable. It's incredible.
Yeah, he did a lot of that in the NBA. Even.
With the Celtics, for a little bit.
Yeah. So what happened to that? See, it was very tough. And now the other thing that happened that year was 60 Minutes came in, and they did a documentary of our team. And they killed us with that story, because they saw the suspensions and this and that. And then we had ESPN had a group that followed us around and we thought it was going to be a great year. We thought, heck, we had a chance to go to the Final Four. So they got this whole thing documented of every other week, a new players testing positive, this and that. We started losing one game after another. We actually turned it around, and we were playing great at the end of the season. We had won 7 or 8 in a row. We came into the Mount West tournament. And we played, and Tremaine Folks was playing great, and so was Chris Herron. We played UNLV in what was the hardest loss I've ever faced. I know it was the hardest for my father. UNLV beat us in the semifinals. Herron was horrible, and so was Tremaine Folks. They both had played so well.
What was the crowd like in that game?
It was just rabid. They
must have been nuts,
they
right?
Wearing all black, and afterwards they stormed the court. And UNLV won the WAC tournament, Mount West tournament, whatever. I think it was a WAC at that time, and they ended up going to the NC2As.
That is so wild.
It was a very tough loss, and it was a very, very tough year.
Well, you guys did a good job. I could probably take 30 calls in a row asking you basketball questions, but we're limited on time here, so I will take some more phone calls at 257-5396 with Danny Tarkanian. But let's switch to politics a little bit. Political. Your mother's had a great political career. You've had a good political career, and I wish you did win.
I love the way you
I wish you
analyze careers. Hey, my political career was shorter than my NBA career.
Well, are you going to run again? That's the question.
I don't have a plans to do so. I'm still relatively young, so who knows what's going to happen in the future. Look, I have realized this. I've had, and I'm not I think I have a good evaluation of what's going on out there and so forth. I thought I had a real good chance to win this last election. We ran a great race. I raised more money than I've ever raised. I ran better commercials. We had a better message, and I lost worse than I've ever lost. And it's clear to me that the money that has been spent against me, there was $9 million this year. $8.5 million the year before, $24 million in the last 6 years.
It's a lot of money.
ran, but that's not just it. They run ads that are completely false and defamatory. I've won one defamation lawsuit already.
Isn't that at every level, though, of politics?
No, not like
you don't
they
think
do
so?
with mine. No, they lie.
No.
Usually they lie about, they take a segment of truth, they lie a little bit, and they get away with it.
Go ahead, JD.
Mine have been complete falsehoods. I won one defamation lawsuit. I got a hearing with the Nevada Supreme Court.
I hate negative ads, period, though. I mean, I don't care at what level, what's wrong is wrong.
It doesn't matter. They run them, and this is. So we're talking about, would I run again? They have branded me as a bad person here in this community. The people that don't know me and the people that I don't think are politically active, that just hear these commercials,
that's unfair.
They bought into it and they voted against me. And
Which is unfair. I'm with you. It's unfair.
Do you think that a lot of the migrants from California are actually bringing their politics with them?
I don't think Nevada is a blue state. I think if this last election only 1.5% more Democrats voted than Republicans, and they had a 4-point advantage in the registration. So actually Republicans came out and voted more than the Democrats. Mm-hmm. We lost our Republican base in this last election. Dean Heller, Adam Laxalt, and myself, we all got beat pretty substantially because a lot of the Republicans didn't vote for us. And I think that this election, there was certainly an anti-Trump vote. The people that supported Trump the most lost by the most. I believe that there was a lot of, and I don't know for sure, but what I'm hearing from the consultants that are analyzing it, we certainly lost some of the Republican base. They think it was Republican women, suburban Republican women, which a lot of that was my district. Maybe they were turned off with some of Trump's rhetoric, but they voted against people that supported President Trump. And
let's talk about that. Now, we were talking a little bit off the air. I respect your opinion. We might disagree a little bit on Donald Trump. Here's what I say about Donald Trump, and I want to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll take a couple more phone calls. I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump's rhetoric. I'm not a big fan. I think what he said about John McCain, to me, that was enough for me to say, that's it, I'm not voting. And I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton either. Don't get me wrong. Not a Clinton supporter. But when you go after a prisoner of war and say what he said, to me, he shows so much disrespect towards people. And, look, we're calling this thing a witch hunt, the Robert Mueller investigation, and there's a lot of people that use that word. There's been a lot of convictions here. Okay, Manafort, there's been a lot of... Well, hold on, let me
I
read
was with you for a minute until you sort that garbage.
Well, I don't know whether there's Russian collusion. I don't, Danny. But what I do know is that there's been guilty pleas.
God, I wish we had an hour.
Well, we have about 15 minutes. Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos, Michael Cohen,
Gates. All this stuff. Everybody knows what's been there. Let's talk about the first thing, his rhetoric. Nobody that I know has really... Well, there's a few. Defend his rhetoric. He's not. His language of what he does is not what I would like to see in the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. But name a person who's, you just said, a more heroic than
John McCain.
John McCain. Name a person who's a nicer person than Mitt Romney. And what do the Democrats?
Mitt Romney's a good guy.
Oh, what do the Democrats do to them? They destroyed them. They destroyed their character. They talked about how bad they were.
When you say they, who are you saying?
The Democrat Party. It's a bad. Look, good. It's a game. It's a Republican Party against a Democrat Party.
Right.
If it's on a football field, a basketball court, whatever. This is all it is a competition. Let me finish for a second.
Sure.
Those two guys. They sat there. They were heroic. They were noble. They got beat up, and they didn't defend themselves, and they lost. Mm-hmm. So. This time, you got a guy who is more obnoxious, rude, and says worse things than they can say about him, and the Democrats couldn't handle it. And people start saying, you know what, maybe we need to have somebody who's going to fight back, who's not going to continue to allow the other side, hey, like they did to me. They defamed me with $24 million and beat the crap out of me. And I live in this community. I gotta see people who buy into that. And he doesn't let it happen because he goes right back. No, let me just finish. Okay. He goes right back after him, and he has that personality. I wish it wasn't like that, but this is the way it is now. You see what they did to the judge that they just confirmed?
Yes.
And what they crucified
Kavanaugh.
this poor guy on an allegation that the lady couldn't get her best friend to substantiate.
I wasn't a fan of that.
But that's the point, though. It all comes together. You have to fight back now in today's environment.
And I don't mind that. Danny, I don't mind fighting back.
Well,
but the way he does it to me is inappropriate and out of line. I just think it's disrespectful.
As it is.
He's thin-skinned.
As it is for what? Oh, absolutely. I'm not defending.
He's an egomaniac. He's a narcissist.
No, he's certainly an egomaniac. He's thin-skinned.
To be honest, you don't think Donald Trump is a narcissist?
I can call half the country narcissists if you want to interpret it.
At the level of Trump, though?
Look at Trump. Trump has his faults and his warts, okay? And as I mentioned, I'm not going to defend his rhetoric. I tell you what I thought when the deal with the handicapped person really bothered me. That was
horrible.
My mom's worked with handicapped children her entire life.
That was horrible.
And that is something that
has to bother you. Any decent person.
Listen, it was him or Hillary Clinton. I thought Hillary Clinton was the most corrupt person in politics, and it was him. I'm going to vote for him any day. Like I said,
I didn't vote for her.
Everybody else ran against. It was him or her. You can't. What are you going to do?
That's where we disagree.
No, it's one or the other. It's a game. It's a competition.
Okay.
It's a game.
And I respect your opinion on that, but that's where we disagree a little bit.
Okay.
I don't agree with voting for the lesser of two evils.
So let's get to the point. I agree completely with what you're saying about his rhetoric. I'm not going to defend his rhetoric. I agree with that. But I'm also going to tell you we have the greatest economy in the history of my lifetime. We have the lowest unemployment rates for Black, Hispanics, women, everybody in the last 40 years.
Yep.
They get mad at him because he attacks NATO members for not paying their fair share. Who doesn't think that they should pay their fair share?
I'm not arguing
Who
that.
in the right mind thinks that we should still stay in Afghanistan after 17 years? He has the courage to pull us out, and he's got Republicans.
You're not going to hear an argument from me.
But I'm talking policy stuff, and that's what I like about him.
And I respect your opinion. I respect that.
No, I'm asking you, do you like those things?
Absolutely,
okay.
100%. But
right.
I will say
you
this,
like the
though.
stock market?
I do. Can I ask you a question about the economy, though?
Yeah.
Do you believe that Obama got it rolling in the right direction?
No, Obama's had the worst recovery since the Great Depression, the slowest economic recovery after recession in the history of our country.
But look at what he took over.
Besides the Great Depression.
But look at what he took over, though. You don't give him any credit for getting it back.
He's the only president in modern time that was there 8 years and never had 3% GDP. They printed money, $85 billion a month they were printing. They had stimulus packages of almost $1 trillion, and he had the slowest recovery ever. He strangleholded businesses with his regulations. We can go on and on and on. No, I think what he did was he took it at a very low point and he got it stable. Trump has taken it off to levels we've never seen before, which other people haven't.
And I don't disagree with you.
That's why I defend him as our president, because of what he's doing with his job.
You defend him for the policies that are put in place. And I don't have
a problem. That's all I've ever said.
He's also a smart businessman. He has a lot of experience making deals and compromises. He's very straightforward and blunt to the point.
I'll tell you what, the other thing they all talk about, oh, God, these trade wars, we're going to pay more money, this, that. Do you know that when an automobile comes into the United States, and let me see if I got these, I think there's a 5% tariff that the United States charges. But when we go into Germany or into Europe, it's 15% they charge us. And when we go to China, it's 25%. Who thinks that's fair?
No, I'm with you.
But who's had the guts to say and do it? Only he has. Obama didn't do it. Obama left 8 years. George W. Bush didn't do it.
And is he a nationalist? Yes. Is he a white nationalist? No.
Here's what I say about Obama, and you're probably going to disagree with me on this. And by the way, I don't necessarily disagree with anything you've said.
I'm talking policies, and I like his policies.
I don't disagree with you. I think he's got, except for transgenders not serving in the military. I am not for that. Do you agree with that?
I think that people should be able to live their lives the way they want to, as long as they perform their
so you don't agree with every one of his policies, but most
of course not. Who agrees with? I don't agree with every one of my wife's positions.
Danny, I respect that.
Wait. Speak up on that one.
Yeah,
Look, JD's.
I hope she's not listening.
Danny, my co-host is the same way. Here's the problem I have with some Trump supporters. Not you, not my co-host, because you both are you like his policy, you don't like the rhetoric. I respect that, Danny. What I don't respect are people out there that went after Obama and go after Democrats, but when Donald Trump says something out of line, they don't say, look, I don't support that.
Barack Obama almost destroyed the ability to create your own small business.
And you know what?
It was very, very close.
Again, that's a policy issue. I'll say this about Obama. I think he is a good husband and a good father. You could disagree with his policies. I don't think he helped raise.
I think he should have stayed a husband and a father. That's what he should have.
He was amazing.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
He was amazing for corporations, and he was terrible for racial relations.
He certainly was.
Danny,
when they start talking about the race relations deteriorated with Trump, it started with Obama.
We have 3 people on hold. I'm going to get to their calls. We only have 8 minutes left in this segment. But let me just tell you, here's some of my issues with people that are way on the right. And it's just policies. I would disagree. I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman having an abortion so long as it's not a late-term abortion, okay? I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with Mike Pence, our vice president. His wife works at a school, and forgive me for saying this, but I have a problem with it. That school, homosexuals are not allowed to go to that school, and you can't work at that school. He believes in conversion therapy. We can talk policy all day, but I don't have a problem with people getting married. If people disagree with gay marriage, that's fine. I have a problem with those things.
Okay, look, and I have no problem with. I support people living the lives they want to live as long as it doesn't significantly harm other people. And then we can argue whether abortion does or not. I have my beliefs.
Sure.
Certainly, gay marriage doesn't. But I want to, before we get to the callers, you made a comment about all these people that have been charged and even some of them convicted. None of them have dealt with anything close to collusion. They've all dealt with items that were peripheral and before the election even happened. That's it.
But can you agree the investigation is not over yet? Let's wait and see.
But let me ask you this: what do you mean collusion? I mean, first of all, where is it against the law to collude with anybody?
It is against the law. If they had that meeting and he told Donald Trump about that meeting, and it was about
I'm sorry. So
digging
you're
dirt on Hillary Clinton.
So you're telling me, first of all, you live in a fantasy world. If you think that somebody from a campaign gets a call from anybody and they say, "Hey, I got dirt on your opponent. You want to hear about it?" That person of campaign is not going to come and want to hear about it.
Even if it's one of Vladimir Putin's guys, you have no problem with that.
Listen. I love the fact you just walked into something that the Democrats can't get out of. The dossier,
I'm not a Democrat.
The dossier was paid for by Hillary Clinton, and their sources were all Russians.
And you know
we're
what?
all Russians.
If
that's collusion.
And
if you want to call collusion,
okay, I don't have a problem with that.
But
if you want to send her to jail for that, that's fine.
The point is that is what they do in politics, and all of a sudden you want to act like people want to act like maybe not you. People want to act like Trump did something. First of all, there's no evidence. I don't know. There's no evidence.
I don't know.
Let me finish for a second. There's no evidence yet. If there will be, we'll find out when the Mueller's investigation that there is any collusion between his group and but even if there is, what I'm saying is, it's common. They do it. Hillary Clinton was doing it with when they hired the guy from England to go and do the dossier with all the Russian people that were doing it.
Why is it, Danny, then that so many people around Donald Trump have been lying? Why is it that 13 Russian nationals, we're taking in? Why is it that Roger Stone lied? Why is it that Michael Flynn lied? Why is it that Michael Cohen lied?
How do you know Roger Stone lied?
Has he been convicted? And he was indicted, and there have been convictions. Paul Manafort, Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos.
Yeah.
Why are they all lying? Gates.
Paul Manafort was lying about his taxes and things like that before he knew Trump.
Stone lied to the FBI.
Michael Flynn. You have no idea what Stone did. There hasn't been a trial
yet. The indictment is he lied to the FBI.
Well, he says he hasn't. So how do you know until there's been a trial?
And keep in mind, all these arrests came because of the probe.
But look at the things. The deal. Papadopoulos. I mean, what does he lie? What does his lie have to do with anything? I mean, wasn't it the most minor thing? What was his lie?
Well,
about?
I know that there's a plea deal, and
look at the fact is none of them have been caught in a lie dealing with any collusion.
Look, Danny,
none of them have caught a lie dealing with any collusion.
I understand. I want Donald Trump to succeed because if Donald Trump succeeds, America succeeds. I hope there's no collusion. I just want to wait and see till after this investigation is over with.
Didn't Obama collude with the opposition party in Israel in their last election because he wanted to see their prime minister removed? Sure, he did.
Mm-hmm.
He colluded with them. It's okay for the United States to collude with other countries on their elections, but you're going to say, hey, it's against the law if somebody does it here, even when the opponent's already done it, Hillary Clinton? Well, it's crazy what we're talking about right now. Look, if you want to go after Donald Trump, go after him for what you said. You don't like the way he talks. You don't like the way he
I do that every
people.
day.
But when you start talking about this collusion stuff, I
don't know if there's collusion. I didn't say he colluded.
It's just so hard to prove. You're going to have to prove that he owes someone in the Russian government money.
Here's what I don't like.
His debt has led him to listen to what they have to say, basically.
If he has nothing to hide, let's wait and see until this investigation is over with. And if there is no collusion found, then I will say that on the radio.
Look, the investigation's been going on for almost 3 years. A year during the election, 6 months, and now 2 years afterwards. What they've done is they strangleholded his presidency, where it's hard to get anything done because so much emphasis, energy, and focus is on that. Hey, at some point you got to get to a deal where he can continue as president, trying to make us a better country.
I agree.
Well, they keep dragging it on. Find the answers. Why do you need 2 years to figure this out?
I agree, but I will also go and say that there were 8 investigations into Benghazi.
How about Clapper lied? under oath, and he doesn't get charged.
And
They're lying
that's
all over
wrong.
the place.
Danny,
Exactly.
that's wrong.
The swamp in D.C. is full of liars.
I agree.
Let's get rid of them all.
I agree, but I don't agree that Donald
No.
Trump hires the best people. I don't think Jared Kushner's the best guy for the job.
Well, I'm not defending him either, believe me. But it was Clinton that hired, not Clinton, Obama that hired Clapper. They're
Here's
all
why
lying.
I agree.
And it's horrible. You think the AG, I'm going to forget her name now, the AG who met with Bill Clinton on the airplane, you think they really talked about their kids? You think they talked about kids?
See, here's where I'm different than maybe somebody else that gets into debates with you. I agree with you. That was inappropriate. That was wrong. And if Hillary Clinton broke law, if Bill Clinton broke law, fine. The reason why I talk about Trump more than them is because he's the president of the United States. Well, we only got 2 minutes here to go, and we got some people on hold. I don't know if you could stay for another 10 minutes or so.
I could stay.
Are you sure? Okay, we got James Walsh coming in studio. I can see we had such a we had such a
no, you're fine. We have a basketball specialist coming in for the
I love it. We had such great Jerry Tarkanian stories, and then we bring up politics, and we're both getting red in the face. But I think it's a good debate, and I think it's a fair debate, and I think it's important when we talk about these issues. I'm an independent. I voted for Mitt Romney. I did. I thought Mitt Romney was a decent man. I didn't vote for John McCain. The reason why I didn't vote for McCain is I don't like Sarah Palin. I think she was not experienced enough to be the vice president. That's just my opinion. The reason why, Danny, I didn't vote for Hillary or Trump, and again, you can disagree with me on this. That's fine. I don't like the idea of voting for the lesser of two evils. I like voting for someone that I can 100% support. Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything. I didn't like Donald Trump for a number of different reasons, and I can't stand Hillary Clinton. I literally can't stand her, and I think Bernie Sanders would have had a better shot than Hillary, even though I'm not sure I would have voted for, Bernie Sanders. I think he's a better man. Let's just put it away. I think he's a good man. I think some of his ideas are way to the left. And I don't agree with, Ocasio-Cortez. We can get into this too. I got to get a break here in 30 seconds. But I don't agree with free college. I don't agree with $15 an hour minimum wage.
You don't agree with getting rid of the farting cows?
Have you seen the Green New Deal? That is terrifying.
The farting cows.
Yes.
They want to regulate how many farts the cows
He's going to stick around for another segment, even though Jameson's here. We're going to stick around for another segment. We're here with Danny Tarkanian. Fantastic conversation. Very happy to have Danny Tarkanian in studio. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined again by Danny Tarkanian. We will take your phone calls. Jameson Welsh coming in as well. You're listening to the Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM 720 AM. Welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. Danny Tarkanian in studio. Just coming up here in just a few minutes. Our hoops guru. Not to say Danny is not a hoops guru. He is. But Jameson Welsh from Drive Time Sports will be joining us here in just a few minutes. I have a lot of callers that have been waiting patiently on hold, Danny. So why don't we take a few of them for you? You're talking to Danny Tarkanian. Let's start with JD. JD, thanks for calling in. How are you?
Doing great, Danny. Good to hear you. You still have the fire in your belly.
Me and you have been going back and forth a lot on these calls. You called in a lot when I was on with Kevin Wall, huh?
Well, I had the privilege of interviewing you about 3 or 4 times on different radio shows, and you were always honest. You were always available. You went up against a 3-time loser, in my opinion, in Lee, to run the same defamation ad that Snyder ran and you beat him on it.
Yep.
The same ad that Rosen ran and you beat her on it. I hope now that when you beat her, the money comes out of her personal pocket, not out of the Democratic funds in Washington, D.C. I still think you have something to contribute. Those ads that they ran against you and your family were despicable, and none of them had the right to be in office. Mm-hmm. I told Kevin yesterday, I think if you had stayed, and I know the pressure was great, and ran against Heller, you would have beat Heller in the primary.
Goodness.
You would have had a rematch with Rosen. You would have beat her, and I think Andy Matthews, if he went after Lee, he would have destroyed her.
JD, I don't want to cut you off, but we do have a lot of other callers. So do you have a question for Danny?
No, I would just say this. That was a great conversation you all had together. Great debate.
I appreciate
that. I have a little more respect for you, Mr. Shapiro, because you've stated your positions that I agree with a lot.
Good.
But I'll tell you what, Danny, I can only wish you the best. I hope you get your reputation back from these 3 pricks.
All right, thanks, JD. I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much, JD. Life's good for me. I'm very happy, and I know my reputation is only with the people that know me. I'm not worried about what people that don't.
That's the way you have to. I think that's the way you have to approach it. Let's take another call. Let's go to Michelle. Michelle, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. How are you?
Hi, thanks, guys. Danny, I'm born and raised native Las Vegas, Nevada, and grew up around your family, went to your schools, went to your churches.
Oh.
Everyone I know voted for you. Danny, I want to give you a word of advice. You and Adam Laxalt, you need to seriously investigate and do something about the voter fraud. You're in the position to take this to Washington, to take it to higher levels so something is done about it. Every businessman, every businesswoman, every employed, occupied person I know voted for the two of you.
All right, Michelle, let's let Danny respond on that. Appreciate the call, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The person who's got to investigate voting fraud would be the president, the DOJ, and I would hope that they would be doing that in different places, here included. But I'm not. That's not why I lost. I lost by too many votes. For there to be that many voter fraud. I really believe that those ads, and there was $24 million spent over the last 4 years, 6-year period, but 4 years in between the elections, that it just branded me as a bad person, and too many people that don't pay attention to politics and or what's happened in this community, they just see an ad and they buy into it and they believed it. And
Can you believe all the money that people put towards negative campaign ads? What could we do with that money to help people in this country? The wasted finances.
They asked Harry Reid once, "Why don't you run positive ads?" And he said, "Because I don't want to waste my money." That's how it is in politics.
You're not going to hear me defend Harry Reid. I'm not a Harry Reid guy.
I will say this though: when you start saying everybody lies in these ads and this and that, my father said to me when I first wanted to run for office, he said, "Danny, why would you want to do that? The people that are the most successful are the people that lie the most and lie the best and have the most money to lie the most often."
Yeah.
And he's so true. It's if you have the most money and you can lie real well, you get elected. But then we have all these people here and we complain about how bad our elected officials are. Yeah. Well, maybe it's because you're voting in people that lie.
There you go.
If they lie to you to get elected, why do you think they're not going to lie to you when they're in office?
Jameson is not a very political person, but he is shaking his head yes. So he agrees with you. And so do I. We got the phones lit up, man. I guess we'll keep going to some callers. Let's go to Gary. Gary is next on the Vegas Take. Gary, thanks for calling in. You're on with Danny Tarkanian.
Yes, hello. I just want to say that I believe basketball can help promote world peace. I mean, it's a fact that you guys are in the same studio and
we get along together, huh?
Yeah.
And World War III didn't start because I know how you both feel differently about President Trump. And
well, I don't know if that's true. I think Danny and I agree. Danny and I agree on I think what I disagree with Trump is, and that's the rhetoric. I think we actually agree more than I thought we would. I'm for a lot of Donald Trump's policies, not the transgender thing, and there's a few other things I'm not for.
Not the rhetoric. Okay.
Right. We just disagree with the rhetoric.
I've never been for the rhetoric, but that's the perception
I
people
would
want to
like
put
President Trump to ask Danny Tarkanian, he will be the ambassador to North Korea.
There you go.
I think there's a lot of hope here with a guy that invites Dennis Rodman over there.
That's true. That's a good point.
Actually agrees to meet with the president.
That's true.
And is going to meet with him again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential there. And like I told your screener, I know I only had one beer. I didn't do no.
Thanks for the call, Gary. Thanks for the call. I got to get to small cars, Gary, but I always love it when we hear from you. Thank you so much for calling in. I believe our next caller is Ellie. Is that right? Thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. You're on with Danny Tarkanian.
Hi, guys. Let me just, with all due respect to Mr. Tarkanian, post-Trump, the Republicans will never get in power again. This man has destroyed this party as you know it. He's trying to destroy our country, and I hope the damage is not irreparable. This has been one really bad man, and when I hear people like you try to defend it, it's indefensible.
Let's let Danny hold on a second. I'm going to keep you on the line, but let's give Danny a chance to respond.
Oh, it's easy. I respectfully disagree with you. I think that what President Trump has done policy-wise is great, and it's made our country a much better country. Look, I believe there's much more than just a Republican-Democrat battle that's going on. There is a globalism battle to a nationalist battle. I believe we should be taking care of Americans first, and that's what Trump's want to do. I believe Obama was a globalist. I believe George W. Bush was a globalist, as many others were. Clinton was, so was George H. Bush. And when you're a globalist, you're taking care of other people and other places around the country why people here in America are suffering. We were talking about these wars. $3.5 trillion was spent on wars in the Middle East. George W. Bush got involved in one of them. Obama got in the others. That money should have been spent here taking care of Americans first.
Fair enough. Ellie, I appreciate the phone call. The phone lines are keeping going. They want to talk to you, Danny, so let's take another phone call. Let's go to Johnny. Johnny, thank you for calling the Vegas Take so much. How are you? You're on with Danny Tarkanian.
Great guest. I love it. Hey, Shapiro, this is for you. We do remember when, I'm not too eloquent with this, but Obama was standing up, putting his hands out. When are these jobs going to come back? How are they going to come back? Magic? Remember that smart aleck when he was saying that? That's when he stepped in it.
I'm trying to look. Obama said a lot of things that I didn't disagree with, just in a different way that I disagree with Trump. I didn't like it when after the Trayvon Martin thing, or after Ferguson,
Michael Brown.
Yeah, Michael Brown. I thought he did not help race relations in this country. Not
at all.
Yeah,
he was making fun of Trump when he said all these jobs were going to come back.
I criticized Obama all the time. I'm not a Democrat. All I say is
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Trump is such. If he had more finesse and didn't just tweet all this crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
The gal that just called, man, she's right on the money, man. He hurts him. He's his worst enemy. It's like a dog running
I
on the
agree.
freeway.
You have a question for Danny?
Oh, Danny, you're excellent. That's it.
Cool. Thanks for the call. All right, there you go. Danny, you're excellent, but criticizing Trump, that's fine.
One good one. One person likes me, one doesn't. Okay.
No, I think a lot of guys like you in this town, and I do too. Fine. Just because we don't agree on everything politically doesn't mean I don't like it. Let's go to Brian. Brian, thanks for calling the Vegas Take. How are you?
Doing good. I absolutely love the first hour and all the basketball stories. And Danny, all the best to you. If you do run again, I'll be there answering the phones and calling people, going door to door, putting the signs up. You've been a great candidate. You're well-spoken. Love you and your family. The only thing I wished you would have done is when Amy spoke after what happened this last time, I wish that would have been the commercial to refute all of those other hit pieces.
When Amy did what?
When Amy spoke the night of the election.
Oh, yeah.
And she let it rip. And I'm just telling you, boy, she just said everything that was in my heart about all these people, too. When your opponents won't even come and debate you, that says a lot about who they are.
That's cowardly. And, I'm going to say that. I love a good debate. And, that's cowardly. For people out there that do not want to debate their opponents, I never really understood that. Is that the kind of person you want to vote for? And I'm talking Republicans and Democrats. Why would you vote for somebody that is too scared and timid to debate their opponent? I never really understood that. I respect the people, like Danny. I respect the people that are willing to debate, whether you agree with them or not. I want to hear what they have to say. I've always been that way, Brian.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say, like, I'm with Danny on President Trump and what you've been saying too. I wish he was as eloquent as Ronald Reagan, but he's not. We get him warts and all, but when you look at his policies and what I said the other night, I voted for him because he fights back. He's the first guy in my lifetime that's ever come out a punching.
All right, fair enough, Brian. I appreciate the phone call as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
257-5396. Again, 257-5396 is the number to call. A few more minutes here, and then we will get to Jamison Walsh from Drive Time Sports. Let's go to Will. Will, thanks for calling in. How are you? You're on with Danny Tarkanian.
Well, I'm good. Thank you, Brian. Danny, I'd like to make 3 suggestions. Before I make those, I want to suggest if you don't get into this voting, the technical aspects of the voting, if you don't get into the computer aspects of it, it's all going to be for naught, because I think we're seeing voter massage. Now, here's the 3 suggestions. One is that we need a list of 100 questions we all agree need to be asked of every candidate. The second thing is we need an affidavit of promise and performances. If these people don't perform, we need a way to remove them immediately. The third and final thing is this, that once they become a candidate, every Monday until the election day, we need to put them all in one auditorium and open up every media facet there is and let the public come in and have at these people, not the commentators and the panelists, because it's the same old stuff.
All right, Steve, let's let Danny respond to those, and I appreciate the phone call. Thank you very much.
I think those are great suggestions. The first and third aren't going to do a whole lot of good because there aren't enough people that pay attention. You can write those things out. You can have every media outlet out there, but I believe that close elections are determined by about 3 to 5% of the voters. They don't pay attention to politics. They don't want to hear about politics. All they do, they're at home, they see an ad, or they get the a flyer in the mail, and they believe what these flyers say.
Well, that's stupidity. That's stupidity.
But the people that are following politics, they know who they're going to vote for. They understand who they're going to vote for. The people, and that's where you get the split.
Do you disagree with me here, though, Danny? I think the average person that votes is just not extremely intelligent, and they don't follow politics. Okay. I'm not trying to put you in a bad spot.
That's the death knell of anybody who runs for office. You're not going to get me to agree with that, even though I got my own opinions.
I understand, Danny, but look, come on, let's be honest here. If you look at an ad and you vote for somebody based on an ad, you're a moron. I'm sorry. Let's just call it for what it is.
There's no doubt about it that they work. That's why they spend so much money.
Well, then they're idiots. They're idiots.
And
if you look at an ad and you vote somebody based on, you're a moron. Why don't we take a few more calls? I'm not trying to put you in a bad spot.
We did focus groups before this last election, and we put things out there. You can't believe some of the things people will say. They don't have no idea what's going on, and then they see this thing. They go, well, God, that's got to be true if it's written there and stuff, and people buy that. Anyways.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, a couple more phone calls. Let's go to Steve. Steve, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. You're on with Danny Tarkanian. How are you?
Hey, guys. Danny, I'm glad you came on this show. I voted for you.
Well, thank you. I need a few of you clones.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you came on this show because Brian has a completely different outlook on this country as you.
Not true, Steve. Yeah, I'm not surprised you made a judgment about me like that, but that's not true, Steve. Go ahead.
I listen to you all the time, Brian, and I'm glad Danny came on there and bitch slapped you.
Okay, well, thank you for the call, Steve. I'm not surprised that you come on a show and you use a statement like that. You show absolutely no class. That does not surprise me one bit. But thank you so much for the phone call. Let's go to Ron. Ron, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. How are you?
Good evening, gentlemen, and hello, Mr. Tarkanian.
Hello.
Now, Mr. Tarkanian, I was a poll watcher at Harmon and Polaris Avenue. Now, 3 times they had elections there at different weeks. I watched buses coming from over at the casinos loaded with south of the border people. And I saw cars going in with 2, what I would call American type of people. Now, there was buses, some had 15 on, some had 30 on, some had 8 on. But I talked to one of the bus drivers because I was right there at the polling station, and he gave me the lowdown. They had 6 buses running people from the casinos over to this area at Polaris and Harmon Avenue. And that's why you guys lost, because every person that I thought would have voted for you guys was outnumbered at least 8-1.
All right, Ron, hang on the line. Don't hang up. Let's go to Danny. Let's let Danny respond to that.
You're 100% right, and that happens, but it's well known and it's not illegal. The casino owners, they
that's
provide.
Why you guys lost.
Well, I know. I don't. Well, you have a way to change it. The casino owners put they rent the buses, particularly MGM, very Democrat owners. They put the workers on.
Buses were a Silverado bus line.
Not even just that, but they have their own. They're provided slate cards of who they should vote for and so forth. Mm-hmm. And it's a union. The union's workers are very tough to beat, particularly when they turn out.
Ron, thank you so much for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, guys. Have a good one.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, that's jamming in a lot of calls in about 15 minutes, but you're a popular guy in this town, Danny. Well, listen, first of all, let me just say this. I really appreciate you coming in studio, even staying a lot longer than we thought you would. I appreciate you that. Let you and your son get out of here, but thank you so much for coming in, and I really hope you can do it again sometime soon. I would love to do a full hour of politics with you. I think we could have a good time, but I think we agree more than we disagree. I really JD, would you is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think you guys are pretty.
I'm going to tell you right now. I bet you there are so many people that are not Republicans that agree with 90% or more of what I'm saying. But you get a branding or a focus, like the owner of the Las Vegas Sun, Brian Greenspan, very liberal guy. Mm-hmm. He sat me down, and our families have been close, and he'd tell me, "Oh, you're too far to the right. What are you doing? You got to come more in the middle." I said, "Brian, let's talk about policies. Tell me what you don't agree with." Bam, 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 bam. We went down the line. He said he agreed with all of them. Mm-hmm. We agreed with all the stuff. But what it is people
they don't want to listen to each other.
The
Danny.
media people portray certain candidates as something. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm going to
say a few minutes.
Say this real quick. They portray people as a certain type of something, and they run it on different media outlets, and whether it's now the internet or whatever, and people that see it buy it. Like people have said, "Oh, I'm the biggest Trump supporter. This that Trump can't do anything wrong." I've never ever defended Trump's rhetoric. I've said all along he's got a different.
But there are some Republicans that
but that's
stay
not
silent
that's
on
not
it.
what. But that's not.
Not
we're talking about me in my campaign.
Sure.
So they say this stuff. the things that we talked about here. Look at you may not. We went through the list of 3 or 4 or 5 things, and you agreed with those things.
Yes.
And I think the vast majority of Americans agree with many of the main issues. There's some of them that there's going to be people that don't. Most of the main issues they do. It's just has been such a partisan divide. This is what happens in politics right now. The media, and this is where you're going to disagree with, in that the media is very biased, and it's what Trump says. They create fake news and they create fake articles, and this is how it works. You get somebody in the media. Steve Sebelius has done this to me on 2 different occasions. There's a guy for the Nevada Independent. I'm running a blank on his name. He did it too. They run stories that aren't true, or they run a story that's not relevant. Like Steve Sebelius ran a story, although it's factually was true, but there was no base, there's nothing happened, nothing came about it. And then they put it in their website, or if it's on Steve's deal on TV.
Yes.
And then what happens is, first of all, they get this story by the opposition.
Yep.
So the opposition goes to Steve Sebelius and says, hey, we got this on Danny Tarkanian, you should run the story. So then he runs the story. Then you know what the opposition does?
What?
4 weeks before the election, they send out mail pieces or TV pieces citing the story that they provided to the reporter.
Can I respond to that? Let me say this in regards to the media, and you make valid points, and you're right. The media is biased, but I think when you look at the media, they're out for one thing: money. How do they get money? Ratings.
No,
okay,
I don't believe.
Well, let me ask you something.
I think the media they have their own political ideology, and and they're biased to that. That's
would you agree that as to the left as maybe CNN or MSNBC is?
You talk about owners. You talk about
Fox News is just as far to the right.
The owners have a they want to create the revenue and they want to have this type of stuff. But the people that are running the stories, they have their own political ideology. This guy, I'm running a blank on his name. He works for the Nevada Independent.
Yes.
And he wrote so my opponent said that Danny Tarkanian took $700,000 from a children's charity. Now, first, I got paid a salary of $44,000 a year over 15 years.
That's a lie. It's bias.
Okay, but this guy writes a story saying it was true, and then
that's irresponsible.
No, I know, but listen. He could write what he wants if nobody believes it. But this is what happens. So then my opponent cites his story in the newspaper and television ads to give it credibility. And now people think, hey, newspaper people won't lie.
And they believe it. I understand what you're saying.
Not only that, you log into Google and you type in Danny Tarkanian, and it probably pops up number 1, 2, or 3 due to SEO.
I agree. Let me ask you one more question, and I appreciate you being here in regards to the media. And let's see. I think you're an intellectually honest guy. I agree with you. The media is biased, but as biased as maybe CNN or MSNBC is, and they go way to the left, right? Would you agree with me that Fox News is just as bad to the right? Would you agree with that?
Look at I almost completely. Shepard Smith is not.
He's fair. He's fair. You're
fair.
right.
He's so far to the left. He hates Trump, and he hates Trump, and he goes overboard on it because he doesn't like him. Look, that's fine.
He's not on the right.
Okay, but the point is, look, and there may be some reporters on MSNBC. I'll tell you what, the best reporter on MSNBC. They're not a reporter, I'm sorry. And they're not even a contributor yet. But the best person who shows up on MSNBC and who is the only one with great common sense is someone named Amy Tarkanian. She's on every Sunday at 10:30. She does a good job. She gives good common sense to that station.
I agree.
Look, at each one of those owners, they had certain type of ideology. That unfortunately, Murdoch is now giving it off to his sons who are more to the left than Murdoch was to the right, so it's changing some. But sure, the reporters on Fox News far more are very strong conservatives, and they support those positions.
Right.
Shepard Smith is
well, he attacks Trump, that's for sure. But we agree on that. There's bias on both sides, and it's unfortunate. There's going to be no end to it because CNN and MSNBC love Donald Trump. You know why? They love Donald Trump because he gets them ratings.
If Trump is impeached, or if something happens to him,
I love Donald Trump.
CNN's ratings,
talk about.
Exactly. CNN's ratings are going to drop about.
We love Donald Trump. We talk about him every day.
And Donald Trump agrees with that, and he loves Donald Trump.
Donald Trump does love him some Donald Trump.
He's entertaining. I'll certainly give him that.
The guy, the funniest thing, the senator from Georgia, I believe. God, I'm running a blank. He's so funny. He came to Las Vegas. He did a speech. He said, "Me and I went golfing with Donald Trump, but we have something in common. I like Donald Trump, and Donald Trump likes Donald Trump."
There you go. He certainly does. Danny, I hope we could do this again. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking some time to come in. Maybe we could do this once a month or something. Be a lot of fun. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you to your son as well for being very, very patient and being very, very well behaved.
That's
I
great.
appreciate that. Jamison Walsh from Drive Time Sports. He has been waiting patiently as well. He'll be joining us next. Thank you so much to Danny Tarkanian. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN.